Go ahead and set Tailwind here, which could be important for Brandon going forward. Has to make sure he's maintaining his resources to deal with Shedinja, in the late game. So,
right. That's always the huge mind game here, and hopefully Brandon doesn't overthink things, because you're always thinking about the Shedinja in back. But
yeah.
Okay,
so
go ahead.
So we see Kyogre going for the Protect there. Brandon gets that call wrong. Of course, Manectric could have gone into either Pokemon. So Manectric gets that Volt Switch into this Crobat. So that's a big. Of course, Crobat survives the Volt Switch. It's got a chance to do something. As we do see the Misty Seed on Zygarde, so that's a little bit of a throwback to Moon Series. We've seen these bulky Zygarde teams. And the light screen, kind of to double down on that. So that's going to give Zygarde a ton of bulk here.
Yeah. Actually, Ricky, I played him in Moon Series at the last local here, and he was using Zygarde with Misty Seed. So he's well experienced with this Pokemon, and he's got a couple new partners here. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does here.
Yeah, so he's, it's always cool to see players, going with what they're comfortable with. So this Zygarde is going to have a lot of special bulk, which is going to be big. As Kyogre goes for the Ice Beam, that's just a really good Protect on. He takes 2 attacks with it. Ricky gets a chance to get an Icy Wind off. So Tailwind's still active, but that Icy Wind is permanent unless Brandon switches, and so that puts him in. That puts Ricky in a pretty good position, especially given just how much bulk this Zygarde is going to have thanks to Misty Seed, and it could potentially pick off this Crobat here with an Extreme Speed. Otherwise it's just Ice Beam from standard Kyogre, because that's the only time I've had to Ice Beam a Zygarde. Deals like 30% or something stupid with both of those boosts.
Right.
So, even with Super Fang into Ice Beam, it may not be enough to KO. So we do see the Ice Beam.
Wow.
Yeah, it deals about 40% as 1,000 Arrows comes out, and that's going to KO this Crobat. Doesn't deal a ton of damage to Kyogre, but you don't necessarily need to. And another Icy Wind coming out from Tapu Fini, so that's going to put this Kyogre at -2 speed. So essentially it's at neutral until Tailwind expires, at which point it will be, at half speed.
And that taunt was pretty good. I think that was a good call, because now Tapu Fini can't go for something like a Heal Pulse, which is something that Zygarde really likes. So it's pretty much locked into something like Icy Wind or Nature's Madness.
So I do like that taunt a lot. It prevents the potential swagger to keep this Zygarde from really getting out of control. and it prevents, like you said, the heal pulse, which is something that Zygarde teams in particular really benefit from because of how much bulk Zygarde's able to get. So this Ferrothorn coming in, Ferrothorn's going to be neutral to these Zygarde attacks. However, Zygarde's just going to go ahead and boost up its defenses now, which is going to be big.
Yeah, and I'm curious as to, well, he doesn't target the Zygarde here, so that's actually a great turn for Ricky. I was going to say, if Kyogre goes for the Zygarde again here, Zygarde's actually quite low on health, but okay, he doubles up into the Fini to, oh no, never mind. Power Whip.
So that Power Whip into the Zygarde, damage, but not a whole lot. I wasn't paying enough attention when Zygarde came in. Is this a Aura Break Zygarde?
Yes, it's Aura Break.
I haven't seen it. Okay.
So he's not getting that health bit back, the HP, but I think Brandon there, he was probably thinking, Zygarde's so bulky on the special side, my Ice Beam isn't doing much. Let's see how much Power Whip does. But of course, he went for the coil, so his defense is boosted now. So he's just bulky all around now.
Yeah, so that turn works out pretty well for this Zygarde. Of course, not having the I can't recall what the ability's called, but not getting that Zygarde
Power
complete
construct.
form. Yeah. Does make this at least slightly, it at least turns it into something that Brandon can deal with a little bit easier, because it's not going to be regaining its HP from its reversion.
Right. Now, if I just saw correctly, the taunt is gone. I think that's huge for Ricky. Fini he can't really swagger safely because the terrain is gone, but he can go for a heal pulse, and this might kind of break through this war of attrition that we're seeing right now.
So a heal pulse here, would be like absolutely huge. Getting Zygarde, it's still got some bulk going on, and getting it back up, to high HP to deal with the attacks. So we do see this 1,000 arrows coming in, dealing about 50% to that Incineroar as a heal pulse does come out, and so Zygarde is back to full and is still going to be super bulky here, as the Power Whip does connect with Tapu Fini. So that's an important KO for Brandon to take, because it prevents Tapu Fini from continuing to support this Zygarde. But Zygarde's kind of got what it needs. It's at +1 in both defenses, as well as having that +1 speed, or not speed. It's being neutral to attack right now because it's gone 1 coil and taken 1 intimidate. Brandon's threatening this fake out.
I'm curious about this Ferrothorn on Brandon's side, because we saw knockoff, which is not normally what you see on a typical like Gyro Ball, Power Whip, Leech Seed set. So I wonder if it's an Assault Vest, or he could just not be running Leech Seed. Leech Seed would have actually been a pretty nice tool here, I think, but yeah, we'll have to see. And I also wonder if there's a Fire type attack on Manectric.
Right, Manectric can carry. I think it gets both Flamethrower and Overheat. So, it looks like Ricky got the wrong Protect there, although ultimately not mattering a whole lot since the fake out went into Zygarde and Ferrothorn attacked the Manectric. Sort of a dead turn there on both ends, I think.
But now Zygarde's, he did just over 50% to Incineroar with that 1,000 arrows, and so another one, he's at neutral attack right now, another one should do it. So he's threatening right now, and like I said, depending on if this Manectric has a Fire type attack, he might be able to take out the Ferrothorn if there's no switch as well.
Of course, the Kyogre switch in, of course, is pretty dangerous. It doesn't want to take the Volt Switch coming from Manectric, and of course, it also doesn't want to take the 1,000 arrows. Based on just because of how little HP the Kyogre has remaining. So right. Ricky going for a Volt Switch, repositioning a little bit here.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. So it looks like if the rolls are good for Ricky here, Oh, no. Incineroar hangs on, so he's still got a Shedinja answer alive here, as well as the knockoff. Oh, wow. As well as the knockoff on the Ferrothorn. So Shedinja is actually not in a great spot.
Right, so Shedinja goes down to its focus sash there. Zygarde is just still so threatening right now, right? You know, like Incineroar's down to 9 HP. We did see that there's no berry there, so it could potentially be an Assault Vest or like an Incinium Z or whichever Z move it is that Incineroars have been carrying recently. Brandon kind of realizes there's not a lot he can do to deal with that Zygarde at this point.
Well, and the Manectric in the back. He lost his Tailwind support, and he just has two very weakened Pokemon up front there, and then Kyogre in the back. So Manectric plus the Zygarde is, yeah, super hard to deal with. And he doesn't want to reveal anything else, so, you know, probably a good time to forfeit.
Yeah, so Manectric is actually really tough for Brandon's team in general, right? Like, it's faster than everything he has unless Brandon gets some Tailwind up. And even then, like, he struggles to hit it. You know, I suppose Manectric's bulk isn't the greatest thing, so taking like a boosted water move from Kyogre and Rain is still going to deal a lot. But, you know, Brandon has to play pretty carefully in order to, you know, get that to happen.
Yeah, and depending on maybe his Rayquaza set as well, I could see on this kind of team comp that Brandon has that there might be an Earth Power. But again, Manectric outspeeds and can get a Intimidate off and then Volt Switch out. You know, so it's really, yeah, I agree. I think it's hard for Brandon to take care of this Manectric. So he's got to be thinking of something right now. So let's see how he leads.
Yeah, so it's always interesting. I really love seeing, you know, how players adjust after they've gotten a little bit of information about their opponent's team and about like the play style their opponent takes. So, you know, turn 1 of game 2 might be my favorite moment in any sort of Pokemon match.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool. So same lead for Brandon.
I think Ricky.
So he's. I imagine he is thinking, okay, getting Tailwind up was good in game 1, but I want to make more use of my Tailwind turns, is probably what he's thinking here. But again, that Manectric is just in a great spot. So.
Right, like Manectric just threatens both of these Pokemon so much. You know, it would be. It'd be pretty gutsy, but I could almost see Ricky running Thunder, since one of the things Manectric wants to do is hit Kyogre. You know, you're like, oh, if I'm trying to hit Kyogre, they've got Rain up anyways, I may as well run Thunder for the extra damage.
Right.
Seeing this Zygarde out, I'm sure Brandon wants to deal with it, given, like, you know, how tough it was for him to take down earlier. Especially right now, since Zygarde doesn't have the light screen up, you know, he's in a better position to deal some damage to it.
Okay, and this could have been maybe a really nice switch here from Brandon. I was thinking something like an Extreme Speed plus the Volt Switch might actually knock out the Crobat before it does anything. So let's see what Ricky has gone for here.
Yeah, so this Ferrothorn switch in I actually really like. Ferrothorn's in a pretty safe position, at least right now, as Zygarde goes for a Protect. And Manectric Volt switches off of the Ferrothorn, so Ferrothorn taking very, very little damage.
Yeah, even with the critical hit, even with that critical hit, you know, I think that confirms that that's an Assault Vest. I mean, that took nothing.
Yeah, so Shedinja coming in here, you know, Shedinja just like, there's really not a lot either of these Pokemon can do to deal damage to me right now. Of course,
well, there is a knockoff.
We saw the knockoff from Ferrothorn. Of course, Shedinja does always threaten the Ally Switch, which is something that just makes it such a pain to deal with. And of course, if Ferrothorn is carrying Leech Seed, which is still a possibility, although having seen knockoff, you know, you have to wonder what move did the Ferrothorn, you know, forego in order to have that.
Right. Okay, here it is.
So there's the Ally Switch, as Zygarde goes for a Dragon Dance. So this is a double dance Zygarde.
Wow. I'm not sure I've ever seen Dragon Dance and Coil on Zygarde.
Oh, but Brandon saw that Ally Switch and goes for the Ice Beam into Zygarde.
Gets the crit. Wow.
What a
Huge
gutsy
turn.
play.
Huge turn, and the knockoff to bring it down to its sash. Wow, Brandon.
It is such a big play from Brandon's side of the field. Like, you know, taking a big risk there, but paying off, you know, massively paying off.
Yes, that was awesome. Now we're back to the Manectric. I mean, that's a huge thing gone off Brandon's team, that Zygarde. But, you know, now we're back to Ferrothorn's at -2. Kyogre's threatened. I mean, Kyogre can get a big Origin Pulse off.
Right, so an Origin Pulse here, I don't know my calcs at all, but I know Manectric doesn't have a ton of, you know, special bulk. So Kyogre does have a lot of special bulk. It can certainly survive a Thunderbolt. Maybe not a Thunder, though. As Incineroar comes in here.
Yeah, so Brandon doesn't even want to mess with the calcs. I think he's just wanting to get to play safe here. He might go for something like a Power Whip onto Manectric just for some chip damage. Oh, the Ho-Oh did come to this match. Interesting.
Yeah, so Ho-Oh we didn't see last match. As an Eerie Impulse comes out.
Okay. Eerie Impulse, he's trying to reduce the special attack of Kyogre. It's kind of a cool move on Manectric, but of course the switch was really nice there.
So Brandon there, you know, going for that ally switch read again, didn't work out, gets a little bit of chip on Manectric, but ultimately not a huge deal one way or the other, right?
Right. Yeah, so the Ho-Oh is interesting. I mean, the fact that he doesn't have Tapu Fini, that might be actually really tricky for Ricky, because the Tapu Fini has a good matchup against Brandon's team, and it was hard to take out last time. So the Ho-Oh is threatened by the Kyogre, but yeah, I don't know. This will be interesting.
Yeah, so of course the Ho is threatened by Kyogre, but in turn, Kyogre's pretty threatened by this Manectric, as a Volt Switch from the Manectric is going to bring that Shedinja back in, and Brandon targeted with a Flare Blitz into that Shedinja, or into what was that Manectric slot. You know, this could be a free Shedinja KO, as Tailwind comes up from Ho-Oh.
So looking at the rest of Ricky's team, oh, here we go. You were right, Whitney. So there's the Z move.
Is this the malicious Moonsault? Because if it is, I love this this animation.
Yep.
So
into the
Moonsault.
Into the 1 HP Shedinja. So it does hit, fortunately.
It is super effective, of course, so it will deal the damage, but you know, you don't need that Z move to pick up the KO here on the Shedinja.
Right. Knockoff. Okay, I was thinking from the team comp that this was a Flyinium Z Ho-Oh, and because no item was knocked off, it looks like it is.
So that's some good information for Brandon to take here.
It is.
Be interesting. I think, you know, obviously knock out this Ferrothorn, but with a you know, something of that nature. But of course, he does have to worry about the Kyogre switch in. But Kyogre doesn't want to switch in here, right? Like, you know, taking damage from Manectric on a switch would just be not great. So,
right. I mean, some might call it a safe-ish play to go into the Ferrothorn with Kyogre, but yeah, but then that happens. So I think it's smart for him not to switch there. Here comes the Flyinium Z.
Yeah, so let's play. I assume, you know, both are into the Ferrothorn slot, you know, just kind of fishing for that switch.
Well, I wonder, though, because Incineroar is hard for Ricky's team to... Oh, yeah, it isn't to the Ferrothorn. Now, this is really interesting because I think the Incineroar is actually pretty tough to take down. And he survives. Because his Zygarde is gone, there's not a lot of ways that he can really deal damage to Incineroar well.
Right. So, both of Brandon's Pokemon have been, I want to say, intimidated twice at this point. And a ton of damage.
Manectric has been. I think Incineroar once, maybe.
I like that he's kind of targeting that Manectric, though, right? Because once Manectric goes down, it's pretty free for Kyogre to come in and finish off that Ho-Oh. Like, Manectric is definitely the bigger threat here.
Right. Right. So that's Brandon's strategy right now. See if
So
this Brave Bird's at -1, so he's okay. He just goes for the Ferrothorn, takes some recoil and Iron Barbs damage. Yeah, and I think the Tailwind's going to be petering out here after I think one more turn, and so I wonder if this Kyogre is going to be faster than the Ho-Oh when Tailwind's done.
right, because they both have the same base speed, so it kind of comes down to how each Pokemon was trained.
Right.
I do like this Crobat coming in instead of the Kyogre, though. We saw that Crobat survives the Volt Switch, so it kind of forces a double target. I think Brandon is kind of in the position where he's like, once I KO Manectric, I'm in a good position to go ahead and win the game with Kyogre versus Ho-Oh. So I like seeing Crobat here instead of Kyogre. Definitely, in my opinion, the right call for Brandon to make.
Yeah. So we've seen Protect now. Okay, Recover. Doesn't really help out versus Kyogre too much, but that's still, that still could be clutch for him. The Manectric, I would imagine, is Volt Switch, Eerie Impulse, Protect, and we haven't seen the last one, but probably Snarl.
It could be Snarl. He doesn't necessarily need the fire coverage because he has the Ho-Oh on his team.
Right.
And is still wondering what that last move is. But he might be able to safely reason that it is Snarl.
And seeing the Recover on Ho-Oh generally means no Protect.
Right.
So that's a good taunt right there.
That taunt to prevent another Tailwind and to prevent any sort of recovers. So to pick up the KO on Manectric, and now Brandon kind of just needs to figure out a way to get his around the field to attack this Ho-Oh. Right.
Great spot now. He did really well to just chip down that Manectric, which was obviously the huge threat on his Kyogre. And the taunt there was really nice. So yeah, he could almost just let one of his Pokemon go down here, I think, and just get Kyogre in for free.
Right. I actually think that's the play, right? This U-turn here that does let him get his Kyogre in. Of course, he'll take some Brave Bird damage if Incineroar was targeted, but that's not going to be a huge deal so long as your Origin Pulse can connect. Of course, Kyogre could be carrying Scald, in which case problem. So
so yeah, here's a Brave Bird. I mean, if this crits Kyogre, that's a lot of damage, but he goes for the Crobat. Okay, yeah, so that's basically a game right there.
Brave Bird into the of course, Ho-Oh is taunted, so it can't even protect to try and stall out this Tailwind. So as long as Brandon's carrying a move like Scald or something accurate, he's in a pretty strong position. For some reason, he doesn't have Scald, and it's forced to rely on Origin Pulse and misses 6 in a row. But that's a pretty absurd thing. So
right.
We do see it and get ready for Game 3.
So the standout turn there in Game 2 was when Brandon called the Ally Switch, and he Ice Beamed the what became the Zygarde slot, which is incredible, and crit the Ice Beam at the same time. And because I think the matchup here is hugely in Ricky's favor, but that one turn was huge because his Zygarde was gone. His way of dealing with Brandon's Incineroar was gone. So Ricky needs to prevent something drastic like that happening again. And I really think the matchup is strongly in his favor. I think the pressure is on Brandon to figure out a game plan again for Game 3.
Right. So calling that Ally Switch, if he can make more gutsy reads like that to pick up the KOs on the Zygarde. And of course, I think we definitely saw how important Tapu Fini was in Game 1, and then I feel like not having it in Game 2 definitely went in Brandon's favor. So we'll see if Ricky agrees with that and makes that decision to go ahead and bring Tapu Fini back in again.
I do wonder about this Tapu Koko set for Brandon. I wonder if he has 2 Z moves on the like on the Incineroar and on the Koko, or if it's like an Assault Vest Koko. I would imagine we don't see it, because of the Manectric, but still, if it's something like Nature's Madness, Assault Vest, support kind of thing, it might be something that we see.
That's definitely something Brandon does not want to give Electric Terrain to Manectric, that would allow Volt Switch to KO the Crobat, it would allow a lot more damage to be coming out into Kyogre as well. There's always the potential, Lightning Rod on non-Mega could kind of neuter the Tapu Koko anyways, so it's a little bit of a, an awkward matchup for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So we do see, Ricky going back to his Game 1 lead of Tapu Fini and Manectric. I definitely think that Tapu Fini was a huge boon in Game 1. So it's
mm-hmm.
certain to be again.
Yeah, based on the Pokemon that Brandon has been bringing, he really only has the Ferrothorn to deal with the Tapu Fini. So he kind of has to maneuver like he tried to in Game 1. He has to maneuver a way to get Ferrothorn in and go for a big Power Whip or something. So Fini is a real problem. And Manectric always a great lead in this matchup. I think 100% of the time you would lead this.
Yeah, Manectric is just so threatening to Brandon's team, and it gives you the ability to pivot around with Volt Switch as well, which is super important. And of course, Tapu Fini, like you said, based on what Brandon's been bringing, it's to deal with Ferrothorn, and Tapu Fini's in a really strong position. So we do see Ferrothorn going ahead and coming in here. Block a Volt Switch or any sort of electric attack going into the Kyogre, preserve it for later.
Mm-hmm.
You see Manectric go for the Protect, doesn't want to take like a Fake Out plus Origin Pulse or something, as Nature's Madness connects with Ferrothorn. So
that's a nice play from Ricky.
Obviously 50% damage to Ferrothorn. And Ricky takes, almost no damage there. Of course, Brandon does have an opportunity to adjust here with his U-turn, as he does bring in Crobat.
Yeah, so I would imagine Brandon knows at this point, I think, that Manectric wants to Volt Switch onto Crobat. He could... I think we saw in Game 1 that Volt Switch plus Icy Wind barely did not KO Crobat. So that could be good for Brandon to know. He might just go for a taunt on Fini, but he might just want to set up the Tailwind. I'm not even sure how much Tailwind really benefits him here, unless he wants to set up Tailwind and go for the Kyogre sweep, switching Kyogre right now or something.
Right, so... Crobat's not threatening any damage, and the Tailwind isn't going to help Ferrothorn out, so we do see Incineroar coming in here. A Tailwind could be useful there, but I think last game we saw that even under Tailwind, Manectric was still faster than Incineroar.
Right.
To the Volt Switch into Crobat, which I definitely think, was kind of like Ricky's only move there, right?
Yeah.
And so now his Zygarde's back in, and it is going to get that +1 special defense thanks to the Misty Seed. So Zygarde's kind of back in the same position it was in last one a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And it's a good one too. Here's the light screen, and I don't think we saw that one yet. Oh no, we did.
Yeah, so now this Zygarde's in a position where it's just very threatening due to all of its special bulk.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, since we've seen both dances, we do know that it doesn't have it doesn't have extreme speed as an option. So Crobat's
right.
at least around for one more turn to off a Super Fang.
Mm-hmm. And Brandon's probably thinking, oh no, I need to get my Incineroar out so I can get it back in. Oh, Haze. Okay.
Yeah, I really, really like that Haze there. You know, removing that removing that special defense boost from Zygarde is really big.
Really big for the Kyogre, yeah.
He does still have Light Screen to contend with. Does allow him to deal a little bit more damage with that Ice Beam into that Zygarde. So that's a pretty good move for Brandon to have made right there, I think.
I agree.
As Ferrothorn does come back in, and this 1,000 Arrows is just going to go ahead and KO that Crobat. It misses the KO on Crobat, but it looks like Icy Wind is going to pick up the KO there.
Right, because 1,000 Arrows isn't super effective on the first turn it hits if it hits a Pokemon like Crobat.
Right, it has to drop it down first and then remove the flying typing for that purpose. And
here, I mean, so Kyogre goes, so he's gonna try to make use of his Tailwind turns here. But of course the Light Screen is up. I mean, Ricky has access to things like Heal Pulse, you know, Nature's Madness on the Kyogre. I mean, this combo of Fini and Zygarde, we've seen it all throughout VGC 19. It's so potent. There's so many things he can do.
Right, so Zygarde did lose its special defense boost, but it does still have, which is going to weaken the Ice Beam a little bit, and he does still have access to Heal Pulse from his Fini, you know, to kind of reset that damage, and potentially start like boosting with Zygarde to put it in a position to, you know, sweep the rest of Brandon's team.
Yeah, and I think Brandon not taunting the Fini this time around, I think he's feeling that one right now.
For sure. So we do see this Water Spout. It actually deals a good chunk of damage to Tapu Fini thanks to that critical hit. As a Nature's Madness into the Kyogre, also goes into the Tapu Fini. So that's actually a really big KO to pick up, right?
That's huge.
Question is it too little too late? Can come in here and deal a lot of damage to this Kyogre, which is at only 50% HP, and Brandon's running out of Tailwind turns, and once he's out of Tailwind turns, he's got no way to outspeed that trick again.
Yes. Now Kyogre might take a Volt Switch at half health. It looks like it's a bulky one, seeing the 201 HP. So it might need to be doubled up on with 1,000 Arrows and Volt Switch, but still, yeah. I mean, Ferrothorn's not hanging around too much longer. A couple 1,000 Arrows there. So, yeah, he's really got to think of right now, how can I go after that Zygarde?
Yeah. So Manectric protects. You know, stalling out. I think this is the last.
Oh wow.
As Zygarde goes for that Dragon Dance, and so that's going to make it, you know, really threatening.
Oh, wow. Yeah, everything went right for Ricky there. That was a huge turn for him.
That was a perfect turn for Ricky. He got a Dragon Dance up for nothing, and ended Tailwind. So now this Kyogre is super threatened. You know, a +1 1,000 Arrows plus a Volt Switch is definitely going to be enough to pick up that KO. Mm-hmm. Ferrothorn's at low HP.
I think right there. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so Ferrothorn's at low HP, and with you know, just Incineroar in the back. Incineroar, of course, doesn't want to be taking these 1,000 Arrows from Zygarde either. So it's a really good position for Ricky to be in.
Interesting that he brought the Ho-Oh again. So I mean, no Shedinja. I think he didn't want to be called again on that making a read. Brandon making a read, but. The Kyogre is gone, so really the Ho-Oh is in a perfect position.
Yeah, so with Kyogre KO'd, you know, Ho-Oh's just in a perfect position here. And of course, with only Incineroar remaining, this is really an uphill battle. Of course, Incineroar's at full HP. We saw in Game 1, or was it Game 2, that it took 1,000 Arrows to KO it, but... You know, it kind of depends on damage rolls, and Arn would be going down, and we'd be seeing single target. I don't think it's going to matter a lot.
Yeah. So
Brandon's seeing that as well.
Yeah, I
Well
mean,
played by Ricky.
Well played by Rick. Well, and credits to his team building. I've always marveled at Ricky's team building, honestly. He has a winning record against me, and I always come away from our matches like, man, this guy team builds well. I mean, the Manectric comboed with the Zygarde and the Fini and the Ho-Oh. They all just had so much great synergy. I mean, props to him. That was awesome.